Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the National Teachers Briefing on Islamophobia Awareness Month. Thank you for joining us this evening. I know it's the weekend and we really appreciate you all making the time to join us. Islamophobia Awareness Month is an opportunity for us to engage as a community, to work together and to have the conversation about what Islamophobia is, how it affects the Muslim community, and what we can do to support the Muslim community and have these conversations at various different levels with various age groups. Hence, the teachers briefing we've organized today is to to support teachers in having conversations about Islamophobia in your school setting. So without further ado, I want to bring on Aman Ali, who is the head of community at MEND. He will explain to everybody what Islamophobia Awareness Month is all about.
Good evening, Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you once again for joining. Mubashir, can I get sharing rights, please? Perfect. So I'm just going to share my screen for you guys. First of all, a very warm welcome to our presentation today. On behalf of MEND, for those of you who may not be familiar with who MEND are, we're an organization based in the UK with the purpose of tackling Islamophobia. And our purpose is that we want to see a world, a UK, where there's a huge reduction in Islamophobia. We want to see an increase in the political and media literacy of our community, but we also want to see the religious rights of future generations living in the UK as well. And as an organization, we take part in Islamophobia Awareness Month, which is a month-long campaign dedicated to raising awareness of Islamophobia. And what it does is it's a national campaign working with all of the various stakeholders that you can see on the screen. And there's two main purposes behind it. The first one is that we want to highlight the positive contributions that Muslims make in the UK. And secondly, we want to raise awareness of Islamophobia. And you might ask, why is it that you have these two ambitions as a campaign? Well, the first one is in regards to raising awareness of Islamophobia. We live in a society of growing Islamophobia. Just in October, the Home Office released statistics on religiously aggravated hate crimes, and nearly half of those hate crimes were targeted towards the Muslim community. And we know that Muslim students face the brunt of a lot of that Islamophobia in schools and playgrounds and social media, and just in general society as well. So what we're hoping to do through this campaign is to dispel some of the stereotypes, the misconceptions that people have about Islam or Muslims, and raise awareness of the challenges that the Muslim community faces in the UK. Because as a population, Muslims only make up 5% of the population. And so 95% of the population, you'd forgive them for not being cognizant or aware of the challenges that the Muslim community face. The hate crime on the street, the discrimination that happens in employment, and the bullying that happens in the playground, which many of you will be very familiar with. So what we're hoping to do through this campaign is we want to combat ignorance. And a big part of the Islamophobia that we see is based upon the ignorance that people have about Islam and Muslims. And so through the campaign, we want to increase awareness of what Islam is as a way of life, and to combat some of the ignorance that exists in regards to our faith. The second thing that we want to do through the campaign is to tackle bullying. We know that bullying is a huge issue in schools, and there's many forms of bullying that take place. And Islamophobia is just one of those forms of bullying that take place as well. And we also want to change the negative perceptions that people have about Muslims and Islam in general. And we know that how education plays a crucial role in not only kind of teaching young people about the various faiths and backgrounds of peoples, but you're also building the future in terms of the attitudes that people are going to have when growing up. And we know that in the UK, we have a very young demographic when it comes to the Muslim community. I think in the last census, which is going to be updated when the new statistics come out, that nearly 48%, or near enough half the Muslim population are under the age of 24 years old. And I think a third are under the age of 16. So a lot of young people who face this problem on a daily basis as well. And we also want to promote the awareness of the positive contribution that Muslims are making in the UK. And a big part of that is to tackle the negative stereotypes that people have about Islam and Muslims. And we know that the most common words that are used to bully children in the playground are words like terrorist and bomber. And so and we know that when those words are being used, it's being used because it's directed towards someone who is Muslim or someone who's been perceived to be Muslim as well. So with that kind of backdrop and that context that we've kind of established, the question I'm going to be answering before I pass on to my colleague, who's going to go into a lot more specifics into some of these areas, is how do you approach your school to address this issue and take part in the campaign? Because it's a month-long campaign that we're doing, and a number of organizations up and down the country, hundreds of organizations are taking part, varying from councils to employers to universities to schools as well. And I think here we have a list of advice of things that you can do as a practitioner, as a teacher yourself, or you may be a parent, or you may be someone involved in education. And there's a number of things that you can do in order to take part in the campaign. The first one is approaching your senior leadership. That may be your head teacher or your SO team members or your head of year, whoever it may be, in order to make them aware of the campaign and that this is an important time to raise awareness of Islamophobia. Another important approach is with curriculum leads. We know that in various schools, you have various models. You might have dedicated teachers who teach PCHE or citizenship, or you might have a curriculum lead who creates learning resources for all teachers who are involved in teaching PCHE and citizenship. And so it's really quite an opportune time to approach those individuals within your schools, make them aware of the campaign and how they can get involved. Another opportunity is through teacher training and personal development. And we know that every school plays a lot of time and focus on personal development, whether that be weekly or bi-monthly. And so my colleague later on is going to come on to how that can be best used as an opportunity to raise awareness for Islamophobia as well. What can also be done is to arrange a workshop with senior leadership to increase awareness of the problem. And this is in particular with schools who may have had an issue with racism or Islamophobia and the school hasn't dealt with it properly. Or there's been misgivings where students have been disproportionately sanctioned or reprimanded, or there's just been a lack of awareness within the senior leadership. So it's an idea that can be explored as well. And a resource that you can access as well, which many schools have done in the past, is Hide the Men exhibition. And so we'll give you further details on how you can do that as well. The last thing I want to suggest is, and you may be already aware, that this year's theme for Islamophobia Awareness Month was Time for Change. And one of the changes that we want to see within the school, school setting, is the addressing of bullying that takes place on a daily basis. And one of our suggestions, one of our changes that we're suggesting that schools can adopt is looking at their anti-bullying policies and having something in particular to address Islamophobia. And if there is something already, then that's fantastic. But if there isn't, then maybe adopting the definition of Islamophobia within your anti-bullying policy is something that can be looked at. Because Islamophobia may be not understood, or maybe that is completely absent from your bullying policy. And so having an a definition, and this is one of the definitions that you can consider, which is the all-party parliamentary group on British Muslims. They came up with this definition that Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. So with that, I'm going to conclude my remarks, and I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Amira, who's going to speak about more specifically resources and tips and tricks that you can use in order to bring about awareness of Islamophobia within your school setting.
So hi everyone, as Omen just mentioned, I'm Amira. I'm the Deputy Head of Community Development and Engagement at MEND, and I have a past in teaching. So I have worked in education, have worked in alternative education, and I was also a science teacher once upon a time as well. So hopefully by the end of me speaking, you guys will have an understanding of how teachers or teaching staff or people in schools can deliver IAM, Islamophobia Awareness Month, in their schools. So the model that I'm going to be using is how how staff, how parents and how pupils can work together to really address Islamophobia. So if we start off with staff first, the most important thing is for staff to have training, the relevant training required to have an understanding of Islamophobia, and then be trained to deliver workshops on Islamophobia with their students as well. So this is something that MEND as an organisation can offer, and you can get in touch with MEND either through the MEND website, which is mend.org.uk, islamophobia.org.uk, or through the Islamophobia Awareness website, which is islamophobia-awareness.org. I'm sure I've got both of those right, but if I haven't, I'm sure that one of my colleagues will add the correct ones in the chat for you guys. So it's really important that staff have the training required before they are kind of speaking to young people or speaking to students about Islamophobia, especially somebody who maybe doesn't have the who hasn't maybe experienced Islamophobia or hasn't seen it happen. They might not have the necessary information before actually going out and speaking about it, which is why it's so important to make sure that staff are given that training. And obviously that can happen during inset days where teacher training is occurring, or during CPD sessions that occur after school as well. And we kind of think that the most important things to cover is the theory of teaching about Islamophobia, and then increasing the awareness of Islamophobia as well. And then the next stage in our model is kind of involving parents. So it's very important that any kind of equality work that is being done in schools, that it's not just pupils that we're working with, but parents as well, because obviously kids then go home and they might be hearing kind of a different line of thinking. So we want to make sure that parents are being involved in this information as well. So for IAM, kind of the key thing is for the school to put out some sort of statement of support for IAM, or to say that, you know, we're going to be addressing Islamophobia this term, so the parents are aware of it, and then providing them with opportunities to learn about Islamophobia as well. So maybe inviting them into the school, giving them, you know, information booklets, that kind of thing, so that they are aware of what their students are, what their children are learning as students in the school. And then the next stage of the model is addressing Islamophobia with pupils. So for me, there's kind of two different ways that we can approach Islamophobia or approach teaching of equality. And one's a direct approach where you are directly talking about Islamophobia, and then there's an indirect approach where, you know, you're changing some of your practices or policies so that students are then finding out about Islamophobia, or embedding kind of anti-Islamophobic practices within your work. So when I talk about direct approaches, I mean something like delivering an assembly and then really explicitly talking about Islamophobia, or delivering a lesson and really explicitly talking about Islamophobia there as well. So when we talk about an assembly, the key thing is to make sure that when we're talking about Islamophobia, that we are talking about it as a separate topic, and it's not just being included as like, you know, we're talking about equality today, and then, you know, every single person who's diverse, talking about, you know, disabilities, racism, religious discrimination, all in kind of one bundle. It's really important to separate all those issues. So specifically when it comes to Islamophobia, really talking about Islamophobia as a separate topic. One of the other things that oftentimes schools, or a trap that schools fall into, is that they will do a lot of cultural celebration. So they might, you know, do like a Eid celebration or a Ramadan celebration. And though they are important, they are not kind of the be all and end all of addressing or tackling inequality issues, especially because, you know, like Muslims are such a diverse cultural community, and those cultural celebrations might not be kind of relevant to every Muslim. So for example, if you're doing a workshop and you've got somebody putting henna on or something like that, that might not be culturally relevant to all Muslims. So though it's important, we think that Islamophobia should be spoken about specifically away from those celebrations. Another kind of important thing to engage young people with this issue is to use really relevant examples. So Amin, when he spoke about 10 minutes ago, he made a comment about bullying in schools and the kind of language that is used. So that would be a relevant thing to bring in when talking about young people, because obviously that's something that happens in schools, so it would be relevant to them. But also talking about things like social media, where a lot of Islamophobia takes place, and young people are being kind of increasingly online, they will see Islamophobia and not necessarily know that they're seeing it. So, you know, using that assembly as an opportunity to help them to recognize it. when these conversations are being had about Islamophobia, then it's important to give the young people next steps. So giving students somewhere to report or to ask more questions. So talking about your own policies in schools, if somebody is a victim of Islamophobia or they see it happening, what they can do. If they see it happening on social media, what they can do there as well. And these conversations can often be difficult, which means that staff should be ready and kind of trained for questions and conversations after the assembly as well. And when it does come to delivering an assembly, that again should not just be like a one-off thing or the be-all and end-all of addressing it or tackling it. It should be part of kind of a larger strategy. And I'll talk about that in a second, but in terms of kind of delivering an assembly, to kind of put it together, obviously you guys working in the schools that you work in will have a better understanding of the young people that you work with, but there are resources on the IAM website, which I think Mubashira has kindly put in the chat for you guys, and there's resources on there that you can use to build the assembly that you think is most relevant for your young people. And then the other way of kind of directly approaching Islamophobia is by delivering a session in the classroom. So for this, we have, again, resources on the IAM website. So IAM is short for Islamophobia Awareness Month. And we've got Key Stage 2 resources on there, which really focuses on the contributions of Muslims. And we think that it is really, really important for young people to learn about contributions of Muslims, to make sure that that is a narrative that they're hearing as well. So for a lot of you, I'm sure that you will have seen that recently there was a report that came out that Islamophobia in Liverpool had reduced, and it was because Mo Salah is playing football there, and it's because of his contribution to society that Islamophobia has reduced. And then for Key Stage 3 and 4, we also have resources there, and this is more discussion-based task where it looks at what Islamophobia is, and then gives children an opportunity to kind of give their opinion and have debates and conversations on it as well. And there's also the opportunity, again, as Amin mentioned, the opportunity to hire the exhibition, which you can put up in the school, and children can again take a direct approach to learning about what Islamophobia is. I'm going to try and share my screen so you guys can see what the resources look like on the website. I think that I have permission to do that. If not, then I might ask for it. So there. So is everybody able to see that?
Yep.
Yeah. If I do that, are you still able to see it?
No, not sure what you did there.
Not sure. Did I press something weird? Okay. Can you see it now?
I can see the screen with the little pictures.
This one. Okay. The website.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So this is on the website. So obviously it's islamophobia-awareness.org/resources. And then as you kind of scroll down, there's loads of information on there that could be relevant kind of outside of the school space. And then under schools resources, we have our, once you click the link, you have your resources for Key Stage 3 and 4. So that is a crib sheet plus a PowerPoint. And then we've got some Key Stage 2 lessons as well there as well, which, as I said, really focuses on the contributions of Muslims. And then for the assembly, as I mentioned, there's lots of information on there to help you to kind of build your assembly. So in this document here, British Muslim facts and figures, if you were looking for specific facts, for example, on young Muslims, then you would be able to go through that and pick out the information that you wanted. And there's also that template talk and other information on there that would be really, really useful to you guys. I'm just going to stop sharing again. There we go. And then, so in terms of, just to kind of summarize it, a direct approach was addressing Islamophobia in assemblies, and then using resources to deliver kind of lessons actually in the classroom. And then there's also an indirect approach when it comes to addressing Islamophobia. So this is how you can embed kind of anti-Islamophobic practices in your own practice. So one of the things is to embed it into the curriculum. So oftentimes what will happen is that just equality issues in general will be given as sessions in subjects like PSHE or citizenship, but subject teachers might not necessarily think about how they can embed anti-Islamophobia in their subjects. So for example, as I mentioned, I'm a science teacher. So for me, it could be really easily embedded by talking about specific scientists. So for example, the scientific method, which was put together by a Muslim scientist, it could be, I could mention the Muslim scientist at that point. And it can be, the same thing can be done for lots of other subjects, so English, maths, art, history, whatever subject it is that you're teaching. There's a way to embed anti-Islamophobia into your subject. And when we, the teacher training that we offer, we go into that in a little bit more detail about how each subject can really embed those practices in. And then also how your classroom looks as well is an indirect way of addressing Islamophobia. So, in terms of the posters that you're putting, any quotes or subject experts, what do those people look like? What are their backgrounds? Is there, if it is relevant, is there, Muslim, for example, again, using science as an example, is there Muslim scientists on there, etc., etc. So there's lots of different ways to tackle Islamophobia directly or indirectly. And I'm going to quickly wrap up because I know I've kind of gone over time, but the top tips is to make sure that we're using the term Islamophobia explicitly. So again, as I mentioned before, not just saying equality or diversity, but using that term really explicitly. Thinking about how the Muslim students who are in your school might need your support, but whilst you are having these discussions, especially if something kind of controversial is said that you're having to tackle, so thinking about how they might need that support. Especially with the key stage 3 and 4 stuff, having to think about how you can help students to think critically about the information that they are consuming. So this is really relevant to like social media, because oftentimes children are young people, but all of us really are kind of bombarded with information, and it's about teaching young people the kind of the skills to critically think about what they're consuming, what the motivations for what they're seeing are. The other thing is that whenever you hear something anti-Islamophobic, any sort of rhetoric from young people, it's always challenging it. So never letting it kind of saying, oh, it's just a one-off and letting it go, but always challenging it, but non-judgmentally. So maybe asking the young people, why do you think that is the case? And, don't shut down the conversation, but find out what the root causes of their thought processes, and then using that as kind of a springboard to help them learn anti-Islamophobic practices as well. And then one of the kind of the key things is that if you don't know the answer to a question, it's okay to say to young people that actually I don't know, and then to do your research, to have a look through it, and then get back to them with an answer. I think that's everything from me. So I'm going to pass back to Mubashira.
Thank you, Amira and Aman, for such detailed information, and I hope everybody finds all of the resources useful. I want to bring in Fahim Haq here, who is a school teacher who has experience in delivering a lesson on Islamophobia. So I thought he could share some top tips with you guys.
Sorry, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. 1 second, let me just share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, we can.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that. So sorry, everyone. So my name is Fahim. I've been a maths teacher now for I think around 7 years or something. Just before COVID hit, I did my first set of Islamophobia awareness assemblies in the school that I used to work in. So this is my experiences of it. So let me first give you some context about the school that I was working in. So at the time I was working in a school in East London, and that school had quite a mixed demographic, but a very, very significant part of the population, school population, was Muslims. I would say at least 40%. And the school had a very, very strong focus on equality, such as LGBT, Holocaust Memorial, Black History Month, etc. All these types of things that were being celebrated and memorialized. However, there wasn't anything explicitly that reflected the Muslim students inside that school. And as someone who is who likes to think that they're practicing or they're trying to practice Islam and who's quite proud to be a Muslim, for me, I thought that wasn't really something that should happen. So I really wanted to actually kind of introduce Islamophobia Awareness Month to the school and basically get the ball rolling on that. So this is my experience of it. So this is how I began the process. So the first thing I did was I contacted Aman and Mend for some existing resources. This is even before I did a proposal to the school. And for me, that was more as a way to actually demonstrate to my school that it was something that I've taken seriously. It wasn't just a haphazard thought that I had, but it's something that I've already prepared for, and they can actually physically see what I had in mind. And after that, what I did was my school had a very, very strong NEU presence. So what I did was I actually went to the NEU reps beforehand and I kind of proposed, showed them what my proposal was, and I got them on board. So when I did make my formal proposal, I sent it to the head teacher, deputy head, etc. But I CC'd in the NEU reps and I ensured that I included the slides from Mend. And what happened after that was the NEU reps did reply, CC'd back to everyone and confirmed that they were on board and they thought it would be really, really useful for the school. So what was the end result? So what eventually ended up happening was I successfully delivered 7 assemblies within a 2-week period. That's 1 for each year group. And in terms of the structure of my assemblies, this is basically, in a nutshell, what I covered. So I covered what the definition of Islamophobia is, what is the current existing situation. So for example, how there's a lot of media negativity, politicians like Boris Johnson calling women with burqas like robbers, etc. I went on to what are the effects of Islamophobia, and I believe, from what I can remember at that time, it was around the time or it was thereabouts where the New Zealand shootings happened. So it was quite topical, and I kind of incorporated that into the presentation. I went further into what are the causes of Islamophobia, and I really, really emphasized it. I personally believe that a lot of it was just a lack of understanding about Islam. And as Muslims are a minority in the UK, it's understandable that a lot of non-Muslims may not have many interactions with Muslims. So a lot of it may stem from that. So I decided to kind of focus on that a bit more in my presentation and give them some information that some of them may not have known. I even addressed terrorism in Islam head on. It was kind of an elephant in the room, so I did decide to address it head on. And I finished the presentation with a call to action. So this is like a rough overview of my presentation. Now, what was the impact? Now, first of all, alhamdulillah, it was extremely well received, and I got quite a few emails, students coming up to me, teachers coming up to me, and actually really, really praising what happened. Now, I'm not really someone that does a lot of public speaking inside schools, for example. I'm not really involved with a lot of NU stuff, but this was really, really powerful for them, because I believe what it demonstrated was someone that represented a lot of the Muslim students delivering a relevant topic. So I grew up in an area similar to theirs. I've got beliefs similar to theirs. And because for me, it's not just an abstract topic. It was something, Islamophobia is something that members of my family have kind of gone through. It was something quite personal to me. And I think that really, really came across. And that personal touch, I think, really, really resonated with a lot of the students. And I personally think that a lot of students or a lot of children that are Muslims are growing up with a sense of not self-hate, but they can be a bit ashamed about the fact that they're Muslim, especially with all the negative bombardment that they get. And I basically was quite confident. I started off my presentation and saying, I'm very proudly Muslim, etc. And I think even something as simple as that really, really resonated with them. And I actually had loads of students I've never met before, that I've never taught before, coming up to me and really thanking me about talking about this particular topic. And after this happened, the opportunity came about to actually try and incorporate Islamophobia explicitly into the PC curriculum. So I was liaising with the RE lead, and that was just before COVID hit, so that kind of stalled it, but it was in the process of being embedded into the curriculum. However, there were some challenges that I faced along the way. How am I doing for time? Am I too far?
If you could just wrap up in the next minute.
Okay. All right. So the challenges I faced when I first initially proposed it, prevent was mentioned by my leadership to actually come and present the topic. Now, for me, that in itself was quite Islamophobic, because we believe that the prevent strategy is deeply flawed. They come at it from a more securitization aspect. So why is something that's linked to radicalization, why is someone that works in that organization being told to deliver something to do with Islamophobia? We also had one specific discredited Muslim think tank influence who did try and kind of hijack some of the topics that we were trying to talk about. And also I was told to adapt some of the materials so it didn't offend certain people. Now, I don't mean offense in terms of it was anything rude or brash, but it was more about I included, I think it was FBI statistics about which category of people had the most terrorist kind of activities in the US, and it talks about far right or white nationalism. And I was told to remove that because otherwise some parents might be offended. But I was quite persistent. I kept on adapting it, changing it, amending the presentation, and eventually it came off. So my final thoughts was that I believe that as a Muslim teacher, it is my responsibility to ensure that we push Islamophobia as being something that's recognized and talked about explicitly, not just kind of, as it was mentioned before, lumped in with other kind of equalities. And it will come across the best when it's a Muslim teacher talking about it. And if I'm completely honest, I believe that in the 7 years of teaching, it is my career highlight, because as someone, like I said, who's proud to be a Muslim, I physically saw that a lot of students were proud with the way that this topic was being explicitly mentioned. So hopefully, inshallah, you found this quite useful. I'll pass it back.
Thank you, Fahim. Just a second. Thank you, Aman, Amira, and Fahim for your input. I hope everyone who attended today found the information beneficial. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. Otherwise, I have linked in the Islamophobia-awareness.org website, where you can find all of the resources that Amira was pointing at. You can also contact us on info@islamophobia-awareness.org for any questions or queries or any support that you may need. And feel free to also check out the MEND website, mend.org.uk, for any resources, articles, or information that you may need. If you have any questions, you can put them on the chat now. Otherwise, I think we can call it a day and give you back your evening. Okay, I don't see any questions. So thank you once again for joining. We really appreciate you all giving us your Saturday evening, and we hope to hear from you all about your experiences on teaching Islamophobia in school. Assalamu alaikum and good evening.